Imagine being so greedy to get your hands on money, even beyond 5 million, 10 million. It's just blips on a screen that you went and played in that space and a tweet liquidated you and then you killed yourself. You would think owning Bitcoin would be a good hedge against that type of tweet that Donald Trump put out there, because if you're going to agree that Bitcoin's a risk-off asset, then it should do what gold does. And gold went up. Now imagine if there was a real news article and the stock market fell by 30, 40%. What do you think would happen if the stock market fell by 50%, which is a possibility? It will disappear. And if you own it, so will your net worth. I'm Lloyd James Ross, seven-figure investor and entrepreneur, and I've helped thousands of business owners and professionals turn financial stress into success. If you're stuck in old money habits, overwhelmed by investing, or unsure where to start, this is for you. I'll give you the mindset and strategies to take control, grow your wealth, and achieve financial freedom. It's time to make your money work for you. Crypto markets are in meltdown. The largest liquidation in the crypto markets ever by a factor of 8. It has completely shook the cryptocurrency markets to the point where $19 billion was completely liquidated, and where a lot of people lost their entire net worth, bang, in a matter of minutes, in fact seconds, to the point where a lot of people who had 10x leverage, 100x leverage accounts, which we'll get into in a second, lost $5, $10, and $15 million instantly in the crypto markets, to the point where they're starting to commit suicide. Fact, young people are throwing themselves off buildings because they just got wiped out instantly, because they're playing games, 1, that they can't win, 2, that's degenerate in gambling, and 3, they shouldn't be doing. So, is it the fault of the president for tweeting as he did? No, because they shouldn't be doing 10x, 20x, 50x, 100x leverage ever on anything, no matter what. But as I dive into this, you'll see why they're using leverage and why the behavior is encouraged. But it's what makes it so seductive, and also why you should avoid it. It's a little bit like, hey, don't do heroin once because then you'll do it twice. Like, it's probably good to avoid certain things. Like Charlie Munger had this wonderful saying. He used to say, to be successful, avoid all cocaine and AIDS situations. Now, what he meant by that is, don't go where you're going to die, because then you'll die there. So avoid that. So if you're going to die with leverage, never use it. In fact, he also used to say there are 3 things that make smart people go broke: ladies, liquor, and leverage. And we're going to dive into the leverage one today on this short episode, but one that's actually super, super timely, because this happened only in the last 48 hours. It's fresh off the press. Some of you may not even know it's happening, but a lot of people have seen a lot of actions, especially on X, after President Trump came out and said, hey, this is how it started. This is how it began. Firstly, you have to understand that the crypto markets, there's a high level of leverage in there, okay? So what that means is, in crypto with brokers like Binance and so forth, I'm not the best at it, so I'm going to explain it as best I can. You can borrow up to 10 to 100 times your position size in leverage. So you use money that's not yours in the crypto markets. And because of how they play the forwards contracts, or how they swap your typically in stocks, for example, if you borrow money that's not yours to buy stocks, it's called margin. It's called margin lending, and it's called generating leverage on your stock position. Now, in traditional brokerage accounts, you have to pay interest on that borrowing, okay, generally. But if you use margin to buy a stock, you then are using someone else's money. Now, with leverage, if you get gains, it amplifies the gains. So if you've got 10x leverage, so if you've borrowed 10 times the position size, then you'll get 10 times the return if it goes up by a certain percentage. And of course, you'll lose 10 times as much if it goes down. And so if you've got a 10%, if you've got, let's say $100,000 and you've got $10,000 position, you're basically borrowing $90,000 against the 10. So you're kind of like 10x'd, yeah? Now that means if the position falls by 10%, you're instantly fully liquidated to zero. If you've got 10x leverage and it falls by 10%, the price of the asset falls by 10%, your entire portfolio is wiped out. And some people have had 100x leverage. So if it falls by 1%, they're pretty much wiped out. Okay, but certainly up to 5% gone. And what's interesting about the crypto markets, they're not regulated markets, and there hasn't been a lot of history. So before, with stocks, for example, and margin lending and leveraging against stocks has been happening for many, many years, forever, for a long time. In fact, There was I forget off the top of my head what it was called, but after the after the 1929 stock market collapse, there's a specific law that limits how much someone can borrow against stocks, yeah? And that will prevent massive liquidations like what we're seeing in the crypto market. So in the stock market, they experienced this in 1929. And they said, hey, I think it's called the Glass-Steagall Act. No, that's the Banking Act. I forget what it's called. And they said, hey, there's a law now. You can't just borrow infinitely against positions in the stock market, because they know that if it falls, everyone gets liquidated, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of zero. It's very bad, and they didn't want that to happen again. So there's certain laws and regulations and what's called circuit breakers in the market, in stocks, to prevent this. So for example, if the stock market falls drastically over a short period of time, there's circuit breakers in the marketplace that closes the stock market down, which means you cannot sell your stocks. And they do this to prevent what's called panic, okay? They don't exist in the crypto markets. And what also doesn't exist in the stock market is 10 to 100 times leverage. It just doesn't. Whereas in crypto, it does. Now, what's interesting in the crypto markets is this one. They'll offset your leverage and the payments you're supposed to make on the money you're borrowing against others, that then mean you don't have to pay any interest on the money you're borrowing. In fact, in some positions, they can make money with all that leverage. So it's actually encouraging the behavior. Imagine if you could borrow 100x your position with money that's not yours and make income from it. That's what they're doing. It's gnarly. Like, it's great. So it's just encouraging the behavior. And I understand why some of these young people are doing this. And it's not just young people, but I understand why they're doing it, because they're like, you know what? The previous generations cooked us out of the housing market. The job market's not like it used to be. They're definitely dealing with a completely different financial beast in their youth. It is much harder to build wealth now than what it was, say, 50 years ago, okay? So they're saying, well, how do I fix this? How do I build wealth quicker? So they're encouraged to take 100x positions or 100x leverage over their positions to be able to amplify their gains, to get a foothold and get in front. The problem with it is if they win at that, it's like winning at gambling. All it does is reinforce the behavior. And if you're getting paid to hold positions at 100x leverage, it's reinforcing the behavior again and again and again. So I can understand some of the reasons, but I also say, even though you're desperate, you don't do desperate things, because here's what happened. 48 hours ago, China imposed some licensing application limitations on countries who are importing rare earths. And now, if you don't know, China has the market ownership. They've cornered the market when it comes to rare earths. Now, rare earths are elements, magnet elements, etc., that the United States and other countries need to create defense systems and other things. But it's a very sought after product. That's why it's called rare earths, and it's not called common earths. So if you understand how much of the market China holds, it's a lot. It's a huge number. And so what's happened is China said, hey, we're going to need you to do certain things to get the rare earths. And the Trump team, I think it was either miscommunicated or it was a step. They retaliated with Trump said, hey, President Xi, you've actually done this. You've overstepped the mark. I'm not going to come to China anymore. And there was like, in fact, if you do this, he said in his tweet, on November 1st, I will impose 100% tariffs again on China. Now, of course, when you do that, it sends a clear signal to the marketplace that he's going to do it. And of course, what happened to the stock market? It absolutely fell. It got hit hard, like it would with that type of news, okay? Because no one wants 100% tariffs again. So like even I saw my positions, I think I was like $200,000 in a night. So I saw my portfolio like 200,000 or 300,000 like that, bang. In fact, it might have been 300,000. 300,000 overnight, pop. Now, I didn't lose it because I didn't sell any of my positions, because I understand that news will be digested by the market and it'll react in the short term. You don't even know where it's going to go. It doesn't matter, because I know what I own. I own good quality companies. No matter what Trump says, they'll continue to print profits within reason, okay? So 48 hours later, when he said that and the markets fell, the NASDAQ fell by close to 5%. And this is why I know that crypto is a risk-on asset. In fact, Bitcoin is also a risk-on asset. Because when that happened, you would think owning cryptocurrency, but let's talk about Bitcoin specifically, you would think owning Bitcoin would be a good hedge against that type of tweet that Donald Trump put out there. Because if you're going to agree that Bitcoin's a risk-off asset, then it should do what gold does. And gold went up So gold goes up when there's more fear. It's a reserve currency asset. It's a risk-off asset. And gold went up. So if Bitcoin was a risk-off asset, you would expect it to do the same thing, right? If it's a hedge against inflation, it's a hedge of the markets, blah, 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 and all the junk they spread about what it is and what it isn't, okay? It's a risk-on asset, and it's more correlated to the NASDAQ than any other asset class. And the NASDAQ is definitely risk-on. The NASDAQ is the top 100 non-financial companies in North America. And the NASDAQ fell by 5%. Bitcoin fell by 10%. It's a more risk-on asset than the NASDAQ. So Bitcoin falls 10%. Ethereum fell 20% in overnight. And XRP that everyone's been talking about, I own XRP, blah, blah, blah. It fell 51% in a day. No time in the history of the stock market has any asset, like certainly individual businesses may have fallen 50% a day, but as an asset class, it has never done that. So you think about that. Now, I understand what you're going to say. Yeah, but cryptocurrencies like XRP and Ethereum, etc., they're not Bitcoin. I know. But nonetheless, Bitcoin still fell by a wide, it might have even been 8%. It was close to 10%, but it certainly fell more than the NASDAQ, okay? Just quickly, if you're ready to take control of your finances but feel stuck on where to start, I have a solution. My book, Money Buys Happiness, simplifies investing and wealth building with practical steps to help you achieve financial peace. Get your copy via the link in the show notes and let's get your money working for you. Now back to the episode. Now what's interesting about that is this. The other altcoins, which is what they call them, besides Bitcoin and Ethereum, like XRP, 50%, like are you kidding? That's huge. Now think about the people that had 10 times the leverage or 100 times the leverage. The moment that fell by 1 or 5% in a moment from that tweet, they got liquidated instantly, meaning their net worth vanished because there's not even any warning shots. You don't get like, hey, we're going to have to get you to post margin to equalize this. You don't get any second chances. There's no like circuit breaker. There's no warning shots, nothing. It's called instant liquidate. It's like, it's instant. So you play with fire, you're going to get burned. And of course, Charlie Munger is correct. Those who had leverage just died. And they didn't just die in their finances. When you lose, and people were losing this is only 2 nights ago, people were losing $5, $10, and $15 million net worth, $30 million net worth. It's all over X. It's all over Reddit. You go there, I've lost all my money. I've lost everything. I've got to explain to my wife, I've lost everything. I've lost everything. It's like what happened in 1929 with stock market collapse, lost everything, and they're throwing themselves off buildings. That's what's happening. Young people, but also anyone who was playing in that realm, if they've lost all their net worth, they're actually committing suicide. Imagine being so greedy to get your hands on money, even beyond 5 million, 10 million. It's just blips on a screen. Imagine being so greedy that you went and played in that space and a tweet liquidated you and then you killed yourself. That's why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. Like, it's completely gnarly. And then, of course, people are saying, oh, it's Donald Trump's fault. Look, we all know he's a flippant, he's a in and out type. He says things, right? Now, love him or hate him, he says things that are like gnarly. We know that. So why on God's green earth do you 100x positions where one tweet can completely liquidate you? You'd have to be an absolute moron. Like, you are. And so I don't think you can blame anyone but yourself for that. That's the type of game you're going to play where you're going to die, so don't go there. But there's a great example as to why I completely avoid the space. Like I avoid casinos. I just don't play in some areas. So there's a perfect example of why I avoid crypto, why I avoid Bitcoin. It's not a store of value. It fell more than the NASDAQ. So if nothing else, the NASDAQ's a more effective asset class. And it's a high beta, high risk, high growth asset class. But there's even better places to store your money, right? But if nothing else, you can see now very clearly why Bitcoin is a risk-on asset and why altcoins and crypto is the worst place to play in, and it's full of degenerates and it's an absolute gambling casino. So with that being said, there's proof now in the pudding of what I've been talking about. And it happened in less than 24 hours. It happened in a moment. Now imagine if there was a real news article and the stock market fell by 30, 40%. What do you think would happen to the crypto market that now is very clear, we all know, is completely loaded with leverage. And the reason why it's been going up is because all the leverage has been building into it. Imagine where it's going to go if the stock market fell by 50%, which is a possibility. It will disappear. And if you own it, so will your net worth. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you can now see why I have this channel and why I'm trying to educate you to stay away from the places you're going to die. Because literally, people are dying. All right? This is so important to educate yourself around this so you can avoid it. But I'd love to know in the comments, love me or hate me about this. What do you think of this? What are your thoughts on this? Pop it below. I'd love to get some comments. I'd love to have an argument and have a debate, a healthy debate in the comments about it. But come and leave me some comments, ask some questions, and I will come and answer them. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, go back and check out the debate I had in here with Matt on whether Bitcoin is a good asset or whether it's not. I debated in here, right in here, like it was a fight. So if you want to go watch it, go back and watch that Bitcoin debate. It's on our channel. Check it out. But I hope this makes sense. If you want to share this with someone like, hey, this is what happened. This is the best explanation I can give you without diving any deeper as to why it's important to avoid the crypto markets. I'll see you in the next episode on the Money Grows on Trees podcast. Thanks for listening to Money Grows on Trees. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you're serious about building wealth, make sure to check out the links in the show notes and follow me on all social media platforms at Lloyd James Ross for more. See you in the next episode.